Oh, hey, real quick about the title of this thing. Nicole told me that Mike Rowe is starting a new show called 6 Degrees. And
Well,
he's got a few more followers than us, I think. Um,
ooh.
I know. So I'm wondering if maybe we should come up with a more original title.
What if we just get bigger and we say 360 degrees?
Or what if we did this 306 degrees? Because 360 has its own connotation as a number,
Yeah.
but people can see what we're doing is taking two different expectations, either 6 or 360, mashing them together into something that does not make any sense.
And what if we spell it like that?
306 degrees. Or what if it was 360 and 6 degrees?
I like 306, the idea that we're never really going to come full circle.
We're never
Never going to get all the way around.
306 degrees.
300.
We never come full circle.
Say it again.
306 degrees. We never come full circle. We almost do. We're just 54 degrees short. Or how about this? 306 degrees, 54 degrees short of a full circle.
But here's the thing about low luca. I think a little preparation would be nice.
Virus doesn't go through the through the internet.
You know, you don't know that.
It's true.
It's been unproven. I'm going all black today, dude. Side note, this is exactly what I slept in. I wore sweatpants, a sweatshirt, and a hoodie, or a beanie, all night. Slept in it. I guess you could say I'm feeling cold.
You have power?
Yeah, we're fine. My house is, I don't know if it's like a placebo thing because our house is set to the same temperature as it always is.
Oh, I almost poured this all over me, man.
That would have been embarrassing.
I had it turned sideways.
Yeah, we had one power outage on Tuesday, which kind of messed my week up. Believe it or not, I told you all that stuff on
Yeah.
Polo.
What a mess.
It actually somehow corrupted the firmware on one of my devices. Thank God there's geniuses that know how to fix that stuff. I don't.
Did you know I was joking when I said just get a projector?
I figured you were. I figured that's about 90% Josh selling it. But there was still that part of me that's like, he could be serious. I don't know.
You might not know. I love the idea though of like a cheapo Epson projector from a classroom, like projecting on the wall in your church.
And especially because we've got like $100,000 worth of projectors just sitting up there. Like, why don't you guys just use those ones? You know someone would say that. Someone would walk in and go, what? Why don't you use those ones? Oh, clearly there's a reason. We actually, you know what? We're having a week where we will have no projection when we do this transition. Here's what we're planning to do is we've got two, I think they're like 60-inch TVs on carts, like rolling carts that we have on the floor for confidence monitors, so our singers can look down and see the words and speaker notes, that kind of thing.
Right.
For that week, we're going to put those on stage, and instead of they're angled, we're going to flatten them straight up, put them on stage, and just put the words really big, black with white text. Because, you can read black with white text if it's big enough. It doesn't have to be super big if there's nothing to, get no graphics, nothing to get in the way of it.
You use what video editor do you use? Like Premiere?
No, we do use an app called ProPresenter is what we use for all that.
Okay.
It's like specifically designed for this type of thing.
Because I bet you can make the text kind of scroll, right? and you can make it big enough so basically they could see it from a distance. You might have like one letter, at a time on
Just
the screen.
you're like, I can't see anything. Our goal is to disorient you today. It'll be good because so that'll be the week before we go to our big video wall. So it'll be like, oh, this is bad, and then they'll come in the next week and have their minds blown because, like, it's gonna be insane. This video wall. It's gonna be a 40-foot wide by 11-foot tall TV. Is basically it, and it'll come all the way down to the ground.
How do you, man? I can't even comprehend how to get a video signal out to that.
So what they do is our computer hooks up to this converter that sends out SDI, which is like coaxial cable. That's like the video standard for broadcast video is SDI.
Right.
So that goes out to a device that's like a 2-rack unit thing that receives inputs, and then that's where it does all the processing send to the video wall. And then each video wall has a square. It's basically like a whole bunch of interlocking panels.
Right.
And each panel has its own computer chip, little interface that they all connect.
All right.
And then on each panel, there's 4 little mini panels, which are just the LED fronts, which you will get a little suction device.
Yeah.
You put it on there, you suction onto it, and you pull that little mod right off. They're magnetically held in place. So if you've got like a pixel out or something, you can just pop that one square off, grab another one, and it just goes right back in.
That's brilliant.
This is what's weird about the world of video walls. This is what we found out. They're all produced in China. Every video wall you've ever seen, made in China. The only difference in price doesn't have to do with the video wall as much as it has to do with quality control. How much are the people over here interacting with the people in China? Some people just say, hey, just send us video walls and we'll sell them. The company we're with actually set up their own whole supply chain in China and have gone over there several times and developed things with them. And basically they make them in batches, and you can't intermix batches because the color temperatures slightly change.
What?
So imagine a 40-foot by 11 wall, and then one panel, the color match doesn't match, and you can't find a way to match it. So you have to buy the whole wall, and you have to buy like 10% more that just sit in a closet, so that if one panel breaks, you have from that same manufacturing run, extra panels. And you can't add on to it. If we just say, hey, we want to add an extra 2 feet on the top, they can't do that. They can, it just won't color match. Isn't that so interesting? You have to just buy it all at once. It's like a one shot. At least that's where the technology is at now.
That's crazy. The temperature thing is important, though. I mean, Joe Klein was telling me once, he was at a conference. It was in China, actually. And they were showing like classic works of art, paintings and stuff. And the way that we look at paintings now is usually on the internet. And so they brought up, like, I don't know, The Twittering Machine by Paul Klee, for example. And they put up like 60 images from across the internet, and the color was different in all of them. Yeah. Right? You might not notice it unless they're side by side.
Yeah. It always makes you wonder what it looks like in real life.
Graphic designers will get a special camera that they point at their screen that can measure the color and temperature and stuff. And then they can adjust it in Photoshop or Lightroom or whatever they're using. But if you've got one screen, you can adjust it, right? But if you've got a network, like a mesh of, I don't know how many dozens of screens or panels you're going to be using, I don't know how you could adjust the settings of just one of them.
Yeah.
I guess you can't, sounds like. Here, I want to show you something cool since we're talking about this.
Show it.
I don't think you need sound, but I'm going to share it anyway.
I could not imagine how much that screen cost.
I know, right? It's insane. When Mark and I were at that conference in Korea a couple years ago, our hotel was across the street from that, and we could look out of our window. We just watch it and watch like the whale swimming, and it kept changing every so often. It was amazing.
Wow, it's the curve, it's the bend, the three-dimensional element that just blows your mind. Wow. Dude, I'll tell you, there's so much friggin' technology out there that I just don't even understand that people can do. Even in my own field, I'm probably like like these guys that are like, oh, we just do projectors and we can do masking so that we can project on just a tiny shapes in random places. And you're just like, you guys are geniuses. I'm kind of an idiot. I'm just a sound guy. I'm just a lowly sound guy who knows how to like turn faders up. So this is going to be a trick for me to learn all this video wall stuff. I'm really excited though, because it's going to be like, I mean, really a lot more immersive, than just a screen. Because you see a screen, you go, oh, there's a screen. But a video wall doesn't have any edges. It's just this thing that's there. It's floating in the, and it's like your eye is just drawn to it because it's so clean. You know what I mean? There's no framing on it. So it can morph into whatever it's the environment that it's in,
It's amazing.
It's amazing what getting out of a frame does. You know what I mean? Like to your perception of something. Just like not having an edge makes it feel like it can blend in, I mean, you can hide edges and stuff. Like our screen has black edges and stuff on it, but you can still see it. It's there. But if there are none, it's like, wow, this is so immersive.
Our oven broke yesterday, like the thermostat. So, I mean, it's a gas oven, so you can still light it and it'll cook on the range top. But if you want to bake something, it doesn't work right. So we're looking online at ovens. And
are you looking right now?
Yeah.
During the podcast?
No, I'm just recalling from my memory.
Oh, okay.
Of doing this yesterday. But some ovens have like a display on the back. I mean, your oven probably has this, right? Where there's like a display on the back with the bake controls and the little clock display and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then some of them don't have that. And they have that display embedded in the front down like where the range controls are, the burner controls. And there's something about not having that thing in the back that changes my whole perception of it. I love it. I love that there's and when you said no edges, that's what I thought of.
Yeah, like when you're cooking, it's just a clean surface. You're not seeing numbers and dials and all that. It's funny I wonder how much in your life, if you would just cut out those types of things, like, go minimalist where you're cutting out all the clutter of things. Clearly, I'm living by that right now when you look around my room. Clutter free. Just kidding. It's a complete insane mess. And this is better. This is me after cleaning. So, by the way, here's a topic. I don't know what we plan to do today, but dude, I am so into Beck right now. It's insane. Like, I have listened to Morning Phase like, I don't know, 10 times in a row this week. Just keep going. And the more I listen to it, the more I love it in a lot of ways. And now I'm like, how much of Beck's catalog have I either purposely omitted or just didn't know about,
Yeah, I just didn't know about it.
I was looking at his discography today and okay, great. We all had Mellow Gold because of Loser. I don't know that I listened to any other track on that album because I was 15 when it came out.
I thought it was Odelay.
No, Odelay came out a few years later and has Devil's Haircut.
That I listened to that album a ton. I remember loving that album.
That album was his highest selling album. Dude, you want to know something that's funny about changes in society? So Odelay came out a few years after Mellow Gold and had Devil's Haircut and Remember Where It's At Where
Yeah.
It's At, I got 2 turntables and a microphone. Those charted higher than Odelay and sold a lot more copies than Odelay. When you go to Spotify now, the song Loser has like 220 million streams. Devil's Haircut has 20 million. And Where It's At has 21 million. That's it. So in the 90s, this monster album that he had that had 2 singles on it and sold more now have a combined 40 million streams compared to 220 million for Loser. That just blows my mind. That it's like when people listen to Beck now, they're just streaming that one song. Loser's probably in every single playlist that people put on for like 90s rock. You got to have Loser in there. And then
Right. Yeah.
that whole other album, which was, I remember it being on the radio, Loser, but I remember you couldn't get away from Devil's Haircut and Where It's At in like 97.
Where It's At is one of my favorite songs in the 90s. I mean, that's better than Loser, in my opinion. But I remember Loser being a big splash, right? That was his first single. That was his first hit, I guess.
Yeah.
And
dude, it destroyed everything.
yeah, it was kind of like you never heard a song where someone said, "I'm a loser" like that. I mean, it was like maybe even it's so direct, and its lyrics are so direct in its message that I think you can only understand it as ironic, right?
Yeah, like he's got this persona of being a loser. What's the line? My favorite line in that whole song is "Getting funky with the cheese whiz." I don't know what that means, but I don't want to know what it means. I'm good with it just being what it is. So I was really obsessed. When I was about 15, I discovered the low end of the frequency spectrum. And I went and worked in the fields all summer and bought my first hi-fi system. It was a Pioneer receiver, 2 Pioneer home tower speakers, remember, with the 12-inch woofers in them. And all my friends and I got obsessed with buying these hi-fi systems. We all had our own. We'd often get all of our systems together and hook all 4 or 6 or 8 speakers up at the same time just to see how much bass we could blast in the room. And dude, you listen to Loser, however they produced it, the low end on that thing is like shuddering. It's like, and it's like it shakes the whole house. There's some super subsonic frequencies that hit super hard in that, which is weird because it's like it fit it like checked off all the right boxes. Lots of bass, so it sounds great live, like out of a PA or whatever. You can dance to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got that weird Beck alternative, I don't know what it's called. What don't give a junk rock, like it's like lo-fi almost, kind of self-deprecating.
Yeah.
But dude, so I'm gonna go through I made a new goal. There was a point in my life where I made a goal of listening to all the Beethoven piano sonatas in a row. Now, because I'm so, my life has changed. Now I'm going to listen to all the Beck albums in a row. That's where I'm at.
That sounds great,
Top
man.
to bottom.
I want to do that too. Can I do that?
Yeah, do it. We should do like couple albums a week. Could discuss.
Back when I was driving a lot, going back and forth to Indiana, I was listening to Sirius XM radio. And that's when they started playing that Beck album, Colors or something.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is amazing. Who is it? And it was Beck. And I remember thinking, I didn't even know Beck was still making records.
Yeah. Did you know that the previous version of Logic, they always throw an example song up there? It was that Colors song.
I know. Yeah. But I never did look at it.
I opened it up. It was pretty cool to hear all the stems. I don't think that's the processing they actually mixed with. I think that they probably gave some guy all of the stems and he just mixed it, using Logic stock plugins.
Right.
But it was cool to be able to solo all the stems out, you know what I mean? And see what he did, kind of a thing. But dude, that song Colors is pretty badass. I mean, it's like got a really cranking drums and bass part. And some super cool effects. That's the thing I always appreciate about Beck is like during the chorus when he does all those pitch formant shifting things on the word colors. It's like that's not really a great sound, like on its own, but he puts it right in a place where it fits so well.
Yeah, I
He
love
does
it.
that with a lot of effects.
Everything is all modulated and phased from side to side, and yeah, I just love listening to him.
Yeah, he's become one of my favorite artists, which sucks because when Beck came out, everyone loved Loser, right? I bought it and I played it, whatever, when I was 15. And then when Odelay came out, that was when Beck went sour for me. Because, I was in the metal and like the harder stuff, and everyone's like, Beck's gonna be the future of music. And I'm like, I hope he's not. But now I'm like going back and being like, wow, he was really creative. He's really creative, and he surrounds himself with producers that allow that his interesting creative voice to come out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know why I didn't in earlier, because I love creative like orchestration in like recording. I'm really drawn to that, using weird sounds that are non-standard that just work. He does that very well. So does Sufjan Stevens, which is why he's one of my favorite artists. He's a great songwriter, but he was like, hey, guess what I can play? The oboe. And puts like oboe and flute parts and stuff. And you're like, what is this? I don't know if he plays oboe, but he must have an oboe friend or something. But, his stuff is just like, especially his early stuff, was unusual acoustic instruments, which I loved. But no one does that anymore.
I think I'm self-aware enough to realize that color and texture is kind of my thing as a composer. I'm not great at melodies. My rhythms are dumb.
I got dumb rhythms.
But I like color. What I like about color and texture is that I can sort of sit up all night with my headphones on and just mess around, right? Mess around with settings, mess around with routing, trying to get one thing to modulate another in some way that like no one ever told me I could do, right? So you're kind of figuring out new ways to process and mess with things. And then you end up with something that's kind of cool. But the only way you get there, in my experience, is to just not have a goal, to just have time to sit there and play.
That's interesting. I think I'm the same way. I'm actually more moved by music's visceral quality than a melodic one, and I tend to view melody and harmony in terms of their like sonic impact, right? Like that's why I love Lydian. Whenever you use a Lydian mode, and they use it a lot in like movie scores, whenever there's that kind of moment where they've got that one chord, with the sharp 4 in it, and it resolves a certain way, and there's a very visceral, real, like tangible quality to it to my ear, which gets me. I'm rarely moved by like a melodic contour or just the beauty of a melody, or I literally have it. Someone singing has absolutely no emotional impact on me at all. It makes me feel like a dead-eyed cow when I watch like The Voice with my wife, and like someone gets up there and sings some impassionate thing. I said, yeah, she sang great, but the song was so boring. It was all, nothing in it moved me. And I think that's where I think those other elements are what moves me about music, which is why I love like the scores of Thomas Newman a lot. His music to me has a very real kind of raw and like visceral, tangible quality to the way he uses modes and textures. Like in my all-time favorite movie, American Beauty. If you watch that again and you can get past the whole like 40-year-old wanting to prey on a 16-year-old thing, which is kind of a little weird with Kevin Spacey in that role, but whatever. The music that Thomas Newman made has a lot of marimba stuff and a lot of like little percussion-y things. And it just has this quality to it that draws you in. But anyway, Dorian, he used a lot of Dorian mode in it. It's got that kind of that feeling to it. But it's weird because like in a way, even though like what you're saying about colors and stuff, the guys that I most respect is artists have that quality I don't have, which is like you were saying, you're bad at melody and rhythm, and I am too. Somehow the guys that have mastered melody and rhythm and they use those means to create a very cool color or texture, those are the guys that really blow my mind. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just kind of lazy, but then I like watch something. I look at a score by Ligety where he's notated all this stuff out to get this amazing color, and I'm like, dang, I could never do that. Like his violin concerto, the first movement, the way it all opens up from like nothing, and it's all these string harmonics and stuff, and it's just like kind of sounds like this weird, like out of nothing, this noise grows. It's all notated. Everything is notated. It's not like kind of like ad lib this or whatever. It's like he notates it, and I'm like, wow, that's crazy to me. You know what I mean? Like use those means, which I could never do really, to create those types of textures. I've always been bad at.
Yeah. I mean, I think when I was first started composing, I was thinking in terms of rock and chords and which chords had, I didn't know it. I wasn't thinking in terms of color back then, but really what I was looking for was chords that had a color impact. And now I think that when there's a harmonic moment, you can, when there's a harmonic moment of impact, that's like really cool. Like when you hear the major 2 chord in Yesterday, for example, right? Where that, like, it kind of puts your ear on tilt a little bit, like, oh, that's chromatic. And, you know, I'm sure you're not thinking, unless you're a musician, you're probably not thinking, oh, it's a chromatic chord, but you're thinking, oh, that's interesting and different and unexpected. And then in those moments, if you can accentuate or reinforce that impact with an attention to orchestration, so that you know, you can think it needs more high frequency here, so let's use string harmonics, or it needs more low frequency or something, right? And I think Ligety is definitely thinking in terms of the full frequency spectrum from low to high. He's thinking of the orchestra the way that, you know, I might think of a synthesizer, like using oscillators to get, or bit crusher or some sort of distortion to emphasize high frequencies. He's just doing all that with acoustic instruments, and it blows my mind too, right? And he's thinking, like, when you said melody, when you said Ligety in terms of melody, that's not a connection that I usually make, but you're right that all of his parts are melodic. I just taught Penderecki and Ligety to non-musicians, and I was trying to get across the way that Penderecki just writes long notes, and he writes these chord clusters or colors that are really static. He moves them in different ways, but the way Ligety does it is with constantly moving and sort of pulsating, undulating melodies that combine into this sound mass that's kind of pulsating and living in a really organic way.
Yeah, it's like if you zoom out on both Penderecki and Ligety, there's a similarity, but when you zoom in, the methods that they get there are quite different, especially with all of that's what I was saying, like his sort of, didn't he have a word for that? Micro something?
Micro. Yeah.
What was that?
Micro
polyphony. Yeah, it's like you zoom in and it's like all these little things that when you back all these little things back out, it starts to congeal into this morphing texture.
Yeah.
I would just be like, well, I suck at that, so here's a bunch of, you know, notes, just improvise between these few notes.
I know. You gotta wonder. I mean, this is something we took a course on Ligety together, and you remember we talked about in there. What's the point of he's so precise with his rhythms, right? He's got quintuplets against septuplets and all of these different micro polyrhythms. Why does it matter for the performer in a large ensemble? Why does it matter for the fifth violinist to play those rhythms exactly right, or for, you know, the seventh alto in the Requiem to perform those rhythms exactly right? Because no one's going to hear.
Well, that's the other thing too. It's funny too. It's funny with the way that you think as a composer something's going to come out. So like the opening chord of my dissertation, do you remember this? There's this big drum fill, And I created this structure, this chord structure starting from middle C that alternates. It's sort of like an infinite sequence of just alternating major and minor thirds. So, C, E, G, B, D, F sharp. It's just alternating a major third, minor third, all the way up to infinity, right? Up and then down, going minor third, major third, minor third, down, all the way down. So what happens is honestly, all you do is when you go higher, you're going through the circle of fifths through the sharp, or you're going around it this way. And when you go down, you end up going around the circle of fifths the flat way backwards.
Yeah.
And so as you get away from middle C, it expands even farther away from each other. That middle chord, or that opening chord, I had all instruments play all the notes of that sequence that were possible, right? So like the bass guitar could go all the way down to its lowest note in the sequence, trombones, the highest note in the strings, and whatever.
Yeah.
And so in my mind, as I played it at piano and I was conceptualizing it, I could sort of go from the very lowest note to the piano all the way through the sequence really fast, like do 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 do, all the way to the top note, and hear it all ringing, and it had this shimmering quality that I loved. And then the band played it. We got together and did it in the ensemble, and you were conducting this. It just sounds like, blah, and I was like, okay. I was expecting to hear a little more definition, but then I started listening really close to that recording and realizing too, there was a lot of people missing notes. Like I heard it like a guitar part. I was like, you didn't have that note written. That shouldn't be in the sequence there. You really have to I only know because I know the sequence of notes, but maybe that chord in reality just didn't get fleshed out exactly how I written it. And those little added extra notes, because they thought, oh, who cares? Who's going to hear? I'm playing third trombone. What if I play an A here? Even though that's not supposed to be in that. But no, I don't know.
So I think what I'm getting out of this is that when I compose something, if it doesn't sound the way I expected it to, it's the performer's fault.
Yep, always. It's not my fault.
Well, I mean, do you think also the way that a piano rings its overtones is different, right, than the way a trombone or a violin? So you're going to have overtones depending on how you structure that chord. You could have dissonances in places you weren't expecting them, or places, like I love the sound of a piano playing major sevenths, just a major seventh interval. Like it's real crunchy when you play it a second, but then when you invert it, it's nice and open. And, it's kind of got that's maybe I associate it with jazz or something. It softens. It's like a soft.
It's a soft, harsh dissonance.
Yeah. But then, you write it for strings and it sounds really different. And I think maybe it's the way you touch the keys on a piano versus the way the individual members of a string quartet are going to articulate and bring out different harmonics. And, just a little change in the way you attack the bow on the string is really going to change the harmony. That's really hard. When you're looking at nuances of color and harmonies like that, just so many things can derail the sound you're going for.
That's an interesting thought. So the first piece I wrote at UNT was a string quartet. I don't know if you remember that, because I think we were in the same group our first semester, right?
Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah. I remember.
What did you write?
Quartet.
Did you write one too?
I did. Yeah. It was still never been performed.
So we did a recording of that.
Yeah.
In the MEIT, and my piece, it's super like we're talking about, like sort of more like Penderecki, these really long, just these sonorities that I was obsessed with at the time. And it formed a chord. I love major sevenths too and major seconds. So the opening chord was D, like right above middle C, the open D, and they were doubling it like between the open string on the violin, and they were they were fretting it. They're not guitar players.
That's okay.
So they were doing that, and they were going between the open string and the finger string. It was like it's kind of this movement right in there, yeah. And then they slide up to an E, but then the open D rings with it, so it creates that major second dissonance, which for me is this very beautiful dissonance. And then So that's like one whole like wave where it's just going between those two notes for like 5 seconds. Just it's like one note, then it goes to two notes, then it goes back to one note. That's a whole phrase, right? It's like 45 seconds.
Yeah.
The next time they do it again, and then one part jumps up to a C sharp. So there's that major seventh. So the whole sonority is D, E, C sharp. And it's this sort of, if it was all together, it'd be like a cluster almost. But because that C sharp's up there, it creates that open, it just feels like everything opens up and is beautiful. Like, I mean, the piece is called Into Sun. It's about light, like a morning light coming, peeking over the mountains, that first ray of light that shines through, kind of a thing, kind of a feeling. Is trying to emulate that with a string quartet. And you're right that I could sit down at the piano and play that sonority all day, and it has a certain tonality which moves me, but I did find it equally moving when I heard it in a string quartet, I don't know, maybe there's something to that, but in that case, it didn't change the fundamental, feeling I had with writing it. But I don't know. I don't associate that interval jazz though. Isn't that weird? My whole life, anytime I talk about those types of sonorities, all my teachers always go, "That's jazz. The way you talk about it is like jazz." And I'm like, I hate jazz. I suck at jazz. But maybe I've co-opted some of the jazz lingo and how I talk about harmony. I don't know.
You're American.
You take that back.
I had a conductor. This is my first band piece. And the conductor was looking at the score, and he said, "Oh, this part right here is real jazzy." Actually, no, it was when I was trying to get him. I was proposing that we collaborate. And so I was showing him some of my earlier stuff, and he looked at one and he's like, "Oh, this is jazzy." And I just kind of thought like, ugh, but I didn't say anything because I was trying to, get him to commission me. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I can see that." and then he goes, "Why don't you just write like jazz? Just like put it in the score, and then the performers will perform it like jazz." And I just remember being so like, oh gosh, no, like I don't, like that's not at all what I'm thinking of. So when you have syncopation and extended tertian harmonies, it doesn't have to be jazz.
Exactly. I used to write a lot of extended tertian harmonies. I mean, no one accuses Eric Whitacre of being a jazz guy, and that's all he writes are extended tertian harmonies.
I do. I tweet at him every day, "J'accuse."
And he's like, "Who are you?" "I'm Eric Whitacre."
Like
the way Dave Chappelle says it.
I remember your string quartet and I remember you were you had been very passionate at some point during that first year that we were at UNT about suspensions and how you hated to hear a suspension resolve. And you were just you went on and on about it. Well, then it was like weeks later when we were recording your string quartet and I was listening to it, and the end is like this, there's like a major second that holds for like 40 seconds. And then the lower voice drops a half step into a minor third. And to my ear, it sounded like a sus4, like a 4/3 suspension resolving. And then when they stopped the recording, I was like, man, that was really nice. I love that suspension and resolution there at the end. And you just glared at me.
That's funny. I don't even remember that. It must have been like many of our conversations in class. I hate suspensions. I hate them. What a weird thing to hate. Only people that are in grad school could hate suspensions. You know what I mean? Like, there's a certain environment that grad school creates where you can have passionate talks about hating suspensions. And the rest of the world's like, we're freezing to death in Texas and you're going on about suspensions. And you're like, yeah, bro, get over it. Care about you. Care about suspensions.
And then, you can make relevant connections between the dissonance of a suspension and the dissonance of
life,
the pain of human existence or something.
That's true. I mean, let's just be honest. Any talk of art is going to be always more inconsequential than talking about actual life. But then life without art is also seemingly inconsequential. So there's definitely a relationship to obsessing over it You know what I mean? That makes us feel more alive
Yeah.
than if we don't have it at all. You know, because
Right,
that's the
right.
reason why we want power and we want not to freeze to death, is so that all of those things are somewhat stable in order that we can create art. You know, only the real geniuses were able to really create. I mean, people can have created art through whatever circumstance, but that's what you hope for. You hope that you have somewhat stability in society so that you can create art. You know, there's a space for it. Do you remember Facebook at the beginning? Do you remember how awesome it was?
Yeah.
Like, you could just post really fun things, and it was all about that. And like, it was about people's mundane life. Like, there was a joke about that on Parks and Rec. Remember, like Ben saying, you know, going from town to town. He's like, you know, you need to be like Facebook friends with these guys. And it's like, okay, Ron in Snurling, you bought a new shirt. Who cares? Right? I would much more care about seeing Ron buying a shirt than most of what people post anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just miss people. I miss it when it was about people.
We're just repeating content, right? Content that we're finding online, and then we're just repeating it back out to our followers. We're not actually contributing anything. This is the problem with the idea of content, right? And every once in a while you have some auteur director like Spielberg or Scorsese will come out against the idea of content. Like, we're not producing content, we're making art, and that's different. And then, you know, some people will say that's pretentious, whatever. Like, we're consuming art, that makes it content. But there is a difference, I think, in the way that we think about just the stuff that's online. First of all, we think that it's free and that we're entitled to it for free, and that we should be able to share it. And so if you're creating that kind of refuse, is that the right word?
I think so.
Like trash? Is that? After I said refuse, I was thinking of people like refugees who are.
Don't say that. Don't say refugees are trash. That'll get us canceled on YouTube.
No. Yeah, and that's not at all what I want to say. Anyway, it's like we're just making garbage to put out into the world to satisfy people's appetite for retweeting. And I'm not saying anything that anyone else hasn't said much more eloquently, but
dude, I think that should be the byline of this podcast. Putting garbage out in the world for people to retweet. That should be our byline.
I actually have a document open here. So, say it again.
It's putting garbage out in the world for people to retweet. Dad hack for all you out there. If they're that age, just tell them this is the best part. They'll go watch. This is the best part. You don't want to miss the best part of the show. Go watch it.
How have I not known that? Why didn't someone tell me that when I had small kids?
I just discovered that just this 1 second. Now, let's be honest. I will do anything to get my kids out of this room when I'm in here. Do anything. Oh, there's a pony outside. Go get it.
Click on that link, dude.
All right. I'm opening it. Did you post this?
I made this.
2007.
I made this group in 2007.
Wow.
Back when Facebook was cool and you would make groups like this. And at some point there were several hundred people in this group.
Is it down to two?
Oh, and there's a member request. Here, sure, I'll approve them.
3 members. Hey, way to go, dude. I saw that in real time.
Dude, I even made a list. 100 reasons.
I know, I'm looking at that right now.
I don't think I made this list. I think I just, stole some garbage content from some other website.
So even then, you're still essentially forwarding on what other people said. Number 12. Picard likes painting nudes for art's sake. I'll tell you what. Say what you will about any of that. Riker beard is actually a real thing and amazing. When that dude grew a beard, bold move, especially in the 90s. No one had beards in the 90s, but Riker did. Have you seen the super clips of that show that he had where, what was that show? It was like a paranormal activity show.
What? Who?
Riker, the actor.
No.
What's his name?
I think I know what you're talking about. I'm going to IMDb that right now. You're already laughing. Here, let me maximize it, okay?
Okay.
Is that the right word?
Yes.
Have you ever walked out of a mall into a huge parking area and realized you'd forgotten where you parked your car?
Ever gone mountain biking?
What do you want to be when you grow up? What's the right tip?
Have you called a plumber to your home lately? How superstitious are you?
How much money would it take to make you spend a night in a cemetery? Would you display this as a trophy? Do you have a pet? Do you have a sweet tooth? Do you believe in the power of a curse?
Have you had your hearing tested lately?
Planning a trip soon? Can you remember the tallest man you've ever seen?
Do you love to go a-wandering beneath a clear blue sky?
Have you noticed what big stars real estate agents have become?
Are you careful with your personal records? Does your computer ever seem to have a mind of its own? Have you ever visited a Chinatown section in a major city?
Have you ever visited a flea market? Have you ever visited a truck stop? Did you ever have a job as a waiter?
Have you noticed how many successful restaurants are theme-based these days?
Have you ever had the desire to write your initials in wet cement?
Just these. They're just the best. Oh my gosh. It's, yeah. Taken out of context and streamed together, it's just so good. There's a lot of these that have to do with like you saying something like, and then your kid walks in and asks you these questions. And then it like jumps to 30 random questions, you know, that are like non-linear. Oh, it's so good.
We get to a point in our conversations where the audience knows where we're going, and so we just drift off. It's like, what's the point? Like, oh, I do this all the time. I'm talking, and it's like it should be obvious to everyone what the rest of this sentence is, so I'm just gonna stop now. And then people look at me like, "Are you gonna finish?" I'm like, "Did you not get it?"
Yep. I like 306 degrees. I like that a lot.
Putting garbage out in the world for people to retweet.
306 degrees. 54 degrees short of a full circle.
We never. See, I don't even have to finish that sentence because you know.
We never. 306 degrees. We never come around to a full circle. We should get a graphic that's a circle.
Yeah.
And 306 degrees of it is filled in, but there's this last chunk that's not.
And then Atari will sue us for Pac-Man.
Or it looks a lot like a vertical Pac-Man. Like instead of Pac-Man being like this, he'll be
like like he's trying to catch rain in his mouth.
Yeah.
You ever do that? I do it more in the snow.
Snow's a good time to do that.
Very whimsical.
It is full of whimsy.
How I stay connected to whimsy. Really, if it doesn't snow, I go a whole year without being whimsical.
I know. We get about one whimsy a year. That could also be, you know, 306 degrees. Just a little whimsy. Once a year whimsy.
Whimsical.
Oh,
I
that's
like
good.
saying whimsical because I like the word whimsy, but I also like the adjective form of it. And you could do it like Andy Samberg does in Hot Rod, where he's like whimsical.
What do I say? What way? He's adding the WH to all of them.
Yeah.
What way?
What way? It doesn't even.
I will do that. Yeah, that was good.
Here's another thing that we need to work on for next week. We need to get some advertisers, some sponsors. Now, I think that to start off with, we should just maybe do some ads for products that we use and that we like, right? And we won't get paid for them. It'll be like, hey, the first one's free, right? We're going to do an ad for your company for free.
But how will they know or care?
Oh, well, just we'll email them, right? We'll say, hey, man, we put an ad on our podcast for you guys.
What types of products could possibly ever want to sponsor us?
Stamps.com.
Oh yeah, they're pretty popular in the podcast world.
Right. I mean, Audible. Surely they're going to sponsor us. I don't know why they wouldn't. I mean, they seem to have no discrimination at all in who they sponsor.
MailChimp.
Select Comfort. Do they do select number beds?
Oh, like the sleep things.
Sleep
and
number.
bed?
Sleep Number. So I'll have to learn what it's called before I actually do an ad. But I don't know, man. Maybe we should do like ads for things that we like. I think mostly just to be funny.
What do I like?
You talk about
Shure microphones. Only the best. For cheap.
and you're not even talking about the mic. You're talking about the little leather pouch that comes with
Yeah.
it. Like
Shure leather pouches. Only my most important items go in this. Like my class ring.
You
Which I
nice.
boom. And if you can see inside there, what's that?
Sunburst.
That's a guitar. Can you see the guitar behind the gym?
Oh, I do. Yeah, it's like a sunburst guitar, but not a guitar with sunburst.
Baseball, 99. Our school logo, Nighthawks. Put that in here. What else do I put in here? Oh, what's this? State baseball championship ring.
Man, you've got almost as many rings as Tom Brady.
Boom. Yep, we got a ring for that. That's how proud we were. Those are the only two things in here.
You know what the best part about those pouches is? Every time you buy one, it comes with a free microphone.
I know. And the pouch, it's amazing the difference in cost for pouches.
Yeah.
You know, but some are very expensive, some are cheaper, but I got a little one here. This is from a different company, not as good. Just so you know.
Don't say that company.
I won't, but they're not Shure. Shure pouches. All right, cool.
I gotta run.
All right, man. Good one. Catch you later.
Bye.
Hey, bye, podcast world. Later. How do you stop?
I'm just gonna hit quit.
All right.